It's the early 19th century, amidst the noise of the First Industrial Revolution, and as Enlightenment ideals cut the air through the French Revolution and its subsequent Napoleonic Wars, the splintered German states, after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire by the French, loosely centralized into the German Confederation. These 39 German-speaking sovereign states covered Central Europe, in fear of the surrounding European powers of France and Russia, falling behind as the rest of Europe's ideas of industry and liberalism lead to the future. Enough of it. A young Bismarck sat alone in his office, filing Prussian government paperwork, and in his frustration declared quietly to himself, united German nation. Standing strong amongst the great European powers, with the helm not of liberal reform and flowery rhetoric, but of logical, pragmatic, and ordered conservatism, conceding only to the purpose of a great, unified, stable German nation. Within Prussia's civil service, long before Bismarck's Realpolitik and journeys in diplomacy, a young Otto once remarked that the Prussian civil servant is like one musician in an orchestra. He's confined to his own little part. I, however, to make my own music. Bismarck rose to great heights, and with Germany's ascendance, ever-expanding territory, and rapidly increasing industrialization, a proud nation stands tall. However, it is in his restraint where he made peace, away from European theatrics. In the 3 emperors he has served, he diligently made haste of the unique power that's been given, holding the future of Central Europe. However, Bismarck seemingly fell off the ends of the earth, having resigned the reign of Kaiser Wilhelm II. Through the gaze of history, it is easily found that the tale surrounded by the man himself is clouded with mystical mythos. He is the legend of Germany. To let go of the captain steering the ship is a bold maneuver. After serving the Kaiser for 3 generations, why? Why was he dismissed? Whatever became of Otto von Bismarck afterwards? That cannot be answered without first discussing the prominent upbringing of the young gentleman. On April 1st, 1815, in a town called Schönhausen, Otto was born. Despite being proclaimed a man of the people in his political career, he was born relatively well off. Son of a wealthy class mother and an heir to a low-level younker, lived a life in the countryside, enjoying his ancestral inheritance, living in his father's estate, as well as enjoying field sports. At the age of 6, he was sent away to Berlin, pursuing his studies until 1832, where he attended the University of Göttingen to study law. Up until now, Bismarck was commended by his teachers. Intelligent, tall, but slender, carrying himself, not quite warm, an air of self-respect and admiration by his peers. Pinnacle of Castiglione's courtier, Renaissance man. All still very much true, but the refined, restrained nature of his youth was swept up in the freedom of university life, so much as to earn the title Mad Bismarck. He skipped class, rarely attending lectures, and in his first 3 terms at the university, found himself fighting in 20 duels, all of which wounded him but a single time. In the end, he obtained his degree, and in 1835 received a position as an examiner, a clerk for the city police. Still eccentric outside of formal schooling, in 1838 he eventually made his way towards his military service. However, the family's finances were on the down and was obligated to personally control an estate and agriculture. Further, Bismarck inherited the Schönhausen estate as both his parents passed away. Bismarck is seen cold, as turbulent, interesting times come to and fro, and that adrenaline rush of a bachelor's life's recklessness is sought for. However, there comes a gentler side to Bismarck, a side of great affection, full of wit and charm, away from the sultry, satirical sharp tongue towards men, as documented in letters towards the two women in his life. His sister, Madeline, his wife, Joanna. He writes, years before even meeting Joanna, to his sister, after his usual sweet greetings, darling little one, or my angel, or the sort, he says, I feel lonely and forsaken, and this mild, damp weather makes me melancholy and longingly prone to love. I cannot help it. In the end, I must marry. Eventually, in 1847, his wishes came to fruition. While it was a repose to the chaotic nature of his youth, Bismarck sought more than a tranquil life in the countryside. Still invigorated by his bold nature, ever in presence, matured, and he, the seed of duty and religious conviction, found himself an ascending politician in the Prussian parliament. At the age of 33, under Kaiser Friedrich William IV, in the revolutions of 1848. Known as the Springtime of the People, 1848 sought to challenge the conservatist, royalist status quo established by the Metternich system in favor of the Enlightenment's emerging classical liberalism ideals. Removing the old, replaced with democracy, freedoms, and nationalism. From urban workers to the rural, Europe faced a forceful acquisition, a chance to create a turning point, to turn the system upside down through the will of the people. However, Bismarck, amidst the flowery rhetoric of his liberal peers in the Prussian government, sought for stability, the steady growth of the state. A large idea implanted into the minds of the German people is a sense of nationalism, a willingness to unify into a German state. Bismarck agreed with this sentiment, but in his famous speech, Blood and Iron, he resolutely states, the position of Prussia in Germany will not be determined by its liberalism, but by its power. Since the treaties of Vienna, our frontiers have been ill-designed for a healthy body politique. Not through speeches and majority decisions will the great questions of the day be decided. That was the great mistake of 1848 and 1849. It will be by iron and blood. When he came through a successful career as an ambassador to Russia and France and to William IV, and as Frederick William inherited the throne, the ever-competent Bismarck was appointed Prime Minister. As results came in, success drove more and more to revere Bismarck, eventually mythologizing the figure. In order to accomplish his goals, he waged 3 German wars of unification. The Second Schleswig War, the 7 Weeks' War, and the Franco-Prussian War. Once again, I remind you that German unification was not the result of the popular nationalist sentiment at the time, but the realpolitik, the intricate diplomacy, whether it's through negotiation or war. Not all ethnically German places in Europe were included in the Second German Reich. It was intentionally left to a Protestant, Prussian-led state who retained the hegemony of the German nation. The duchies of Schleswig and Holstein, which was ruled by the Kingdom of Denmark, were, to oversimplify, politically and ethnically tied to Germany. Therefore, in the end, the coalition with Austria was convinced that not interfering would mark an era of Prussian domination. The future of Germany invaded Denmark and settled the Schleswig-Holstein question. The 2 duchies became a joint possession between Prussia and Austria. At a cost, however, was Austria's isolation from her allies. The rivalry between the two, under the German Confederation to decide German hegemony eventually bubbled into the 7 Weeks' War. Britain was busy dealing with domestic affairs as well as not having any real stake in Central Europe. Russia, after her defeat in the Crimean War, avoided European affairs in general, and Napoleon III, who Bismarck met in Biarritz, whose dialogue is lost to history, but in the end of the day, settled French neutrality in the Prusso-Austrian War, possibly to annex Western territory. Bismarck also secures an alliance with Italy, promising Venetia. Now, in June of 1866, the war began between the two German states. Bismarck's hyper-modernized, industrialized military pushed further and further into Austrian territory. With Kaiser Wilhelm pleased, a humiliating treaty, as custom the theatrics of European politics, while marching through the capital city of Vienna, was ordered. However, Bismarck, seeing future conflicts arise from the bitter hatred of the South, possibly disrupting his plans of a united Germany, he threatened to the Kaiser to defenestrate himself from the fourth-floor window if he was ordered such a thing. With this, Bismarck gave Austria a way to save as much face as possible. And in his goals, he was able to make Austria agree to never join a united Germany. Hegemony in the future German state is now settled. Instead of the Catholic Habsburgs in the south, the Protestant Prussians in the north. Further, the joint occupation of Schleswig and Holstein was fully annexed to Prussia. Now, the North German Confederation. All that was left was to convince the southern states, including the border region of France's Alsace-Lorraine. In order to do so, to solidify the strength of what is soon to be Germany to convince the South, France must go to war with Germany. Completely unrelated to this fact, Paris dispatched an ambassador to Ems, a resort holding Kaiser Wilhelm I. It was an informal meeting. The ambassador presented the French demand that a Hohenzollern prince can never ascend to the Spanish throne. The Kaiser would give a definite answer. Afterwards, the two departed coolly. The event was then to be informed to the press. Bismarck, full of liberty to share the report, found an unlikely opportunity to orchestrate a conflict that would lead to a Franco-Prussian War. This event would later be called the Ems Telegram. Bismarck led the French to believe that the Kaiser insulted the French, and the Germans, the French insulting the Kaiser. Wilhelm's supposed insult was used to instigate a war on July 19th. The German troops fought, pushed from frontier to frontier, until September 2nd, where, at a place called Sedan, Napoleon III surrendered. Paris then capitulated later on January 28, 1871. And in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles, the very same place the great Louis XIV stood, Kaiser William I was proclaimed emperor. France ceded Alsace-Lorraine, and the southern states rallied in support. A sense of unity was established against the French defeat, and soon enough, the North German Confederation was declared the German Empire. An era of peace befell the Second German Reich after the Franco-Prussian War, and Bismarck's attention shifted from foreign policy to government. Bismarck, like in the 7 Weeks' War, held restraint. Unlike Napoleon, he achieved his goal. He's done. He halted German expansion at this point. Appointed the Minister-President of Prussia and the Chancellor of Germany, he is indeed a pragmatic leader, albeit still the conservatist loyalist of his younger days. He believed to uphold stability, keeping German hegemony and success, whether through repression or introducing enlightened thinking. He established a national healthcare system, accident insurance, and further old age pensions, as well as universal male suffrage. It is attributed to Bismarck that Germany was the very first modern welfare state, remembering that was just to woo the social liberalist radicals towards his leadership. However, he introduced the Culture Camp, which aimed to demolish the remaining Catholic hold on the German Empire to preserve native, Prussian-dominant culture. This isn't to say that, in fear of losing his power and keeping his office, he didn't also repress socialists and Democrats. It wasn't violently overthrown, but was undone by the democratic elements he helped administer, as well as falling out of favor with the same royal family he lovingly supports. In 1888, 3 German emperors were in the throne, one after the other. On March 9th, Wilhelm I passed away, and in his stead, Frederick III ascended. After a brief 99 days in office, laryngeal cancer overtook him and succumbed. Wilhelm I held Bismarck in high regard, practically being led. In order to maintain power, Bismarck calculated to prime Frederick III to convince the successor to keep in favor with the family. It was the next son in line, however, who Bismarck didn't take account on and clashed heads with. Wilhelm II, the last German Kaiser. While Bismarck failed to carry the election of 1890, falling behind the Center, the Social Democrats, and the Progressive Party, Wilhelm wanted to keep a sense of demagogy in his mind at the beginning of his reign, appealing to the masses. Bismarck had to debate, trying to implement anti-socialist laws, specifically granting the police power to expel socialist agitators from their homes, a useful tool for cracking down on radical opposition. The National Liberalists refused, but the Conservatists would not take no for an answer. They would rather veto an entire modified bill than to say no and push for the original document. Wilhelm II, who agreed with the law, wanted to keep the modified bill, but Bismarck argued, and in his agitation, transparently told the motive for his rejection: to keep agitating the socialists until a violent incident occurred, justifying a reason to crush them. Without the support of the emperor, he had no confidence with other German parties, as he had always fought them. The tension was also increasing between the moderation from the conservatives of the nobility Junkers of old and the new imperialist German Empire, pushing for German expansionism. Ultimately, on March 18, 1890, Otto von Bismarck, at the insistence of Wilhelm II, resigned. Whatever happened to Otto von Bismarck? Upon his resignation, he was promoted to the rank of Colonel General with the dignity of a Field Marshal, gaining the title of Lauenburg. He became a prince. He was elected to the Reichstag, but never took the seat. Aging and growing sickly, he only had a few years ahead of him. Retiring to his estate near Hamburg, he wrote criticisms to his successors, writing books and pamphlets and speeches, tearing the new German government's incompetence. He wrote his memoirs, writing himself a German legend, being the blacksmith single-handedly uniting the German peoples. Joanna died in 1894, spending the rest of his time feeling alone, pessimistic, and bored. He had his black mastiffs, visits from family for company. Clearly, he still felt that youthful energy, that very same feeling upon taking charge of an agricultural estate. He's already written his music. He continues and clings to write one more note. He found himself visited by the Kaiser in 1897, presumably to see how long the old man would last. An eerie sense of false politeness would fall into that room that day. Bismarck still remembers his warning from a decade ago, that if Germany were to keep going in the direction it was headed after his resignation, that one day the great European war would come out of some damn foolish thing in the Balkans. Diagnosed with gangrene, he was eventually disabled to a wheelchair. Then, with difficulty moving in his bed, July 20th, 1898, at the age of 83, Bismarck died. Otto von Bismarck was one of the great figures in history, redrawing the borders from a fallen, crippled successor of the Holy Roman Empire to a rising star in European politics. Thank you.